Welcome to the next episode of the Outbound 300 S-21 build project. In this episode, we're going to be starting on the tail cone. I'm going to put the incidence adjuster blocks in place on this bulkhead here. I've put the screws that go in there, some 3/16 screws on the top and some 1/4 inch on the bottom. And it looks like these just get held in place with an AN3-5. That'll go in there. And in here. I may have to run a ream through those holes just to chase them a little bit, but that'll go there. I'll install the washers and nuts behind there and secure those in place. Got that done. Not that it really matters or anything, but I really like the look of the black anodized blocks against the gray primed bulkhead there. It's a nice clean look for whatever that's worth. Next is the tail spring attach block. That'll get assembled here with some AN3-10s and washers and nuts. I'm gonna do these pulleys now. Looks like we get a little stack up of these parts here. So I'll dig those parts up out of my bin and get cracking on those. So as I'm looking here, I noticed there's a double asterisk right here. And when I come down here, it says this is replaced by this part number here on the tail draggers. Refer to the rudder system installation. Well, I am doing a tail dragger, so I come over here and I see what they've done is they've added a tang that will go here. So here are the tangs that I'll use. And as I look at the tangs, I see that there is a modification that needs to be done. Here's the tang here. So I need to measure back 1 313 thousandths and drill that with a number 40. And that's going to be for a cotter pin, which we'll insert through there to keep the cable from popping up off the pulley. I'm just going to bolt these together so I don't have to mark them separately, and plus that'll ensure that the holes are in the same spot on both parts. These get attached to each other next with a AN3-3 and a tall lock nut. A little hard to get wrenches in there, so I'm kind of just winging it here with a couple wrenches on the end. I should be able to torque it enough. And you don't want, I would imagine, you don't want these super tight here. You want just a wee bit to allow this to rotate. I might have identified something I want to change again. So in the process of putting this together, I see a couple things I don't really like. I don't really like that the corners of the bolt, the corners of the nut are riding up on this radius part of this piece here. But that really isn't too terrible. What concerns me more is that because it's got this hole here in the middle, we're relying on about 110, 111 thousandths of material on either side of that. And keep in mind, this was bent. Looks like it was bent after it was drilled here. And my concern is, if this piece is going to fail, and it might take a while, but I feel like over time, there could be a failure mode here where we get a crack on either one or both sides of this. And kind of the same thing going on with this one here, the shorter one. We've got 80 thousandths. That's not a lot of material. Now I know it's steel. This actually looks like stainless. I know it's steel, but you know, I think I'm going to make my own pieces here, and I'm going to give myself some more material so I don't have such a thin profile on either of these sides. And I may actually make it a little wider between here so that the head of the bolt or the nut, either way, can better fit inside there. Do a little SolidWorks here, and I think this is what I've settled on. I think I'm gonna get these milled from 6061. I've increased the wall thickness. I've increased the thickness here, which is gonna give me a better edge clearance on the hole. Let me open up one of these parts here. I've increased the thickness here. I'm going to have a better edge clearance. Plus, I've made them pretty thick here. That's about 160 thousandths. A little overkill, but that's okay. I don't mind these being a little bit chunky. So just basically a duplicate of this. The other one's just a little longer. If I close this one up, pull up this part here. Same thing, just a little bit longer. And I've gone ahead and made an assembly to check my clearances. I want to make sure that the bolt I use is going to capture the cable here like the original design does. I can tune it with some thin washers or shim stock here if I need to get the bolt length changed in a critical way. I've added a thin nylon or HDPE washer between the two, 40 thousandths thick. And since the flat surface of these is, or the bearing surface is flat, I figured I'd throw a nylon washer in there, and this will get, the bolt will get torqued to just snug and will allow a rotation between the two. I don't really know if there needs to be any rotation there. But there may be some slight geometry differences as the pulleys, as the cable moves or something perhaps. So that will be able to rotate, and I thought that it would just be nice to do a plastic washer there. So this is what I've designed. I've sent the files off to my buddy who's got a Tormach mill, and he's going to see if he can whip up a couple of these for me. Here's the part being machined. My buddy Josh has a Tormach mill, really cool setup, and I asked him to produce these parts for me that I drew up in SolidWorks, and he did a fine job. They turned out great. Incidentally, if anybody is interested in getting these for their S-21, you can contact Josh. I'll put a link to his YouTube channel in the description, and you can reach out to him, and he'd probably be happy to cut you a set of these. The bulkheads are complete, and now I'll work on the bottom skin. I've got the lower skin laid out on the table here. This is 20 thousandths. It's some thin stuff. It's a little precarious getting it up on the table if you're by yourself. I had it underneath here on this shelf. I opened up the hangar door and I slid it out. It was still taped to the cardboard that it comes in from Rans in the crate. I slid it out, and then brought it up on here, and then kind of slid the cardboard out from under it. Kind of kept it supported by the cardboard as much as possible. You want to make sure your work table, though, is really clean. I noticed I had a couple little aluminum chips under there still. I thought I wiped it down, and I was kind of feeling, and I could feel them through the skin. So I guess I just need to really make sure my surface is clean there, because it's so thin. It's like paper, man. So I got that laid out here. I guess the next step is I'll get the inspection rings riveted to the inspection openings there. The manual doesn't specifically state when at least that I could tell, and I looked through everything, it doesn't state when the nut plates get riveted to the inspection ring doubler here. I figure it's easier to do this when you can manipulate it here off the skin. So I'm going to go ahead and put these on now. The rivet I'll use is a AN 473-3. I'm going to rivet the rings on the skin now. For that, I'll use a AN 474-3. I've got those installed. And next, I will do the nut plates on the aft inspection ring. Nut plates are all installed. I've got the ring clecoed to the skin. Tail dragger versions get these pulley mounts here, so I've got those clecoed in place as well. This is all riveted in place. I left the rivets out where the stringers are going to go, because those are going to get riveted once the stringers are in place. The only thing I need to do now is I'm going to go ahead and rivet these pulley mounts in place. And for these, I'm not going to do the solid rivets. I'll do the rivets called for in the manual, which is a AAPQ 42. I've got the stringers and longerons laid out on the skin here. What I need to do is I need to mark where these get trimmed. So I need to put a mark 1/4 inch from the end of the hole here and here. Those are just fall offs at that point. Don't need to do this side because this is a mirror. They get flipped. And the way Rans provides these, the one end of these gets a hole all the way to 1/4 inch from the end. So what you can see down here, though, is that I've got the reverse situation going on. I got to trim this end here. So I've already marked this 1/4 inch from the end here. I've just put X's here to know that those are fall-offs. Same thing's happening here where the inspection rings are. Got a mark here and here. That gets removed. And the same thing here. All right, hold up. Future editing DJ here. I realized after I had done this, cut these stringers, that I should have not sectioned out a piece of that stringer over the inspection hole. I should have cut it up to the inspection hole, taken that piece and cut that, and then use that for the piece behind the inspection opening. The reason being, you get more yield out of the stringer, and I didn't really realize that at the time. I don't know that it matters, but I'm finding that they give you just, I think they give you just enough to do all the stuff you need to do with the stringers. And I'm not sure if I screwed myself yet, but it would have been smarter to have just done that instead of making all those cuts and ended up with a fall off piece that's, 3 inches long for that inspection opening there. So just a word of caution, if you're doing that, probably don't do it the way I did it. Cut it, take that piece, move it over, cut it to length. You'll end up with more stringer left over, for whatever it's worth. To get these stringers cut here, I'm going to use my bandsaw. I got a 14-inch throat on it. I think the longest piece I need to cut or cut off is about 12 something, so that should work okay. Another reason why I put my tools on wheels, make them mobile. I could pull my bandsaw away from the wall, get it into a position where I could have the length of the stringer sticking out of the way and make my cuts, put everything back away. I really like having the shop here with all the stuff on wheels. Keeps everything nice and mobile and keeps it organized when I'm not using the tools. All right, well, let's get these stringers cut. Got the stringers cut and put back in here, and everything lays up nice. I'm glad I numbered them just to kind of know what part goes where. I mean, you could figure it out. It's not that difficult, but this way I was able just to put them right back in place. And everything's trimmed up here just right. So I'll move on to the next step. The manual's calling for taking this now, flipping it over and setting it up on some sawhorses, and then working on clecoing and riveting in the stringers and longerons. I'm gonna forego that. I'm gonna get a little creative. It's raining outside right now. My sawhorses are out there. I really don't want to open it up, and I'm just being lazy, I guess. What I'm gonna do is, I've got this edge hanging over the table for the longeron, the left side longeron. I'm gonna rivet that in place, and that should provide enough rigidity for me to pretty easily take the skin, take it off the table, flip it around, set it down, do the same thing, rivet the other longeron in place. And at that point, it'll have enough stability that I can then take and flip it over and insert the stringers in there, get them clecoed in. I think this will work just fine. Just noticing here, I got a little ahead of myself when I riveted these pulley tail wheel cable brackets in place. I should not have riveted these last two here, this one and this one on each one, because the bulkhead has to slip in here and get riveted in place there. So no big deal. I'll just drill those out, and that'll let me get the bulkhead in there okay. That was easy enough to do. I got it all flipped around safely, no problem. I'll go ahead and put the other lower longeron on there now. There we go. That's more like it. I got those drilled out and the bulkhead fits in there. My first clue when I was riveting this should have been that there was no thickness here, because we've got 20 thousandths on the ring underneath these two rivets, and then it went down to nothing, and I just didn't catch that, but no big deal. One thing that's nice, I'll tell you what, I really like having to drill out pulled rivets instead of solid rivets, because you punch in the mandrel there and your drill just perfectly follows center. It's so much easier. What I've done here is I've pulled the skin away from the edge of the table enough to clear this stringer here, and I can cleco and rivet it in from the bottom. And in order to support this, I just clamped a little piece of I don't know, 80 thousandths aluminum there or whatever, just to kind of hold that edge up and keep it from wanting to bow over. Got that stringer riveted in and did the same thing, pulled it out a little bit more. supporting it with a little plate here. I'm supporting it with another little plate hanging off the end of the table there. And this is just past the edge of the table, so I'll come up underneath and run some rivets in there. I'm not riveting all of them on these, just enough to keep it stable and in place, and then eventually I'll flip this thing over and finish rivet. Got stations 8, 9, and 10 riveted in place. And I was able to do that with everything right side up here. I just pulled the skin out past the table a little bit, got up underneath and got that done. But to go any further forward, the bulkheads are starting to get too tall and it's just too flimsy. They can't be supported by their flanges alone. So I will need to flip this over. But I think what I'm gonna do is I'll clear off the stuff on the end of the table. I'll flip it over. I'll slide it back here. I'll have the table support the front end of it. I'll have it sitting back here. And then I'll bring one of my material supports, set it up to the right height, and I'll support the aft end of the skin down here. May even put one in the middle. And at that point, I'll work on it upside down to get the rest of the bulkheads on and then the side skins. Here's the setup. I've got it flipped over. I've got it on a material stand here. I've got one supporting it in the middle. I need to move it back just a little bit so I can catch this first bulkhead, I think station number 4. But this is supporting it pretty good. I'll be able to go ahead and hang the bulkheads up now and get those riveted in place. Here are all the bulkheads riveted onto the skin. All the stringers and lower longerons are riveted as well. So I guess the next step is start thinking about getting the side skins put in place. Got the side skins laid out here. This one is the right side. I got the left side here. Putting the stringers on, just kind of setting them there and figuring out where I need to trim. So these actually are pretty much full length. The only thing is I just need to take off a little bit here because I got to have about a 1/4 inch from the center of the last holes where you want to cut. So I'll pull about 1 1/4 inches off of that one. And the same thing with this one up here at the front. Got the right side skin flipped over so the inside is down on the table. And I was putting on the top longeron, just clecoing that in, and I had a thought that, you know, I might want to take this edge here and this edge of the side skin and just ever so slightly put a little break in it with my roller here. Just because when that skin comes up here, you rivet, you may get just, I don't know, you may get just a little bit of waviness there. And then on the top of it, I'd like it to not be kind of pushing out onto the top part of the side skin or the top skin, if any of that makes any sense. I got the side skin all set up here, cleat in place, the right side skin. The manual doesn't call for this. I got my level out back here, and I've got it back here. They're both showing 1/10 of a degree. I don't think it's really super critical at this stage because I don't even have the other skin on, and it's still going to be twisty until that other skin gets on and it gets attached to the fuselage cage, and then the top skins go on, and it can still move, I guess is what I'm saying. But you know, why not just give it every bit of luck that it can get while I'm riveting this in place. It'll probably move a little bit here or there, but at least if I start out with them both parallel, I figure it can't hurt anything. Another change I'm making is I'm working on a CAD drawing here for a doubler where the tail spring attaches. I'm going to be doing something with the tail spring, not at first. I'm going to use the factory leaf spring for a while, but I have some plans for a pretty interesting suspension system back here, and it's going to require a little more strength on the lower skin here. So I'm making this doubler that I'll cut from probably I don't know, 50 thousandths, maybe 60 thousandths, and that'll get riveted on there. I really should have done that before I riveted all this together, but this was slightly an afterthought. It's something I had been thinking about, and then the other night I just decided, you know, let me make a doubler and put it on now. I'd rather do it now at this stage in the construction than have to retrofit it later. So that's the plan. I drew this up in CAD. I printed it out just to test fit, and I'll go ahead and properly make it out of some aluminum now. Future me again in the edit, and I realized I didn't get a clip explaining another change I wanted to do, which you'll see in a moment. This is a change where I've added some stiffeners to triangulate in the bulkheads where the leaf spring attaches at the tail spring. Again, because at some point in the future, I'm going to be putting this custom tail spring suspension on. I wanted to really strengthen up and triangulate that area back there. So I'm doing something similar to what was done to my Cessna when it was converted to tail wheel. They had some stiffeners run at an angle from one corner up to another corner to kind of box in or triangulate in the bulkheads. So that's what I'm going to show you now. I didn't get the clip initially explaining that, so I figured I better do that now, and we'll get into the rest of it. This is what I've settled on. This is very similar to how the Cessna that I have, when it was converted to tail dragger, right at the tail spring mount on this bulkhead here, they did a similar arrangement where they had diagonal supports, and it just kind of boxes in this area, and it just provides a path for the load to go down into the longerons, just more of a path for it to go. It's already being transmitted through the side skins and longerons and whatnot, but this just really provides a more rigid method for it to spread that load. Weight is minimal. The weight of these are 5/8 angles, 40 thousandths thick, and it's a few ounces. I am going to put a strip of 062 between the skin and the angle here, since I'm mounting it on the inside of the longeron. There is a gap there of 062 because that's the thickness of the longeron. So I'll add a strip there, little strips here, just so that I'm going to rivet to the side skin all the way down. And I don't want to obviously deform that skin right there. So I'll do that. By the time it's all said and done, I'm probably looking at about, I don't know, I need to really weigh these and see, but maybe 4 ounces, if that. So minimal. I know it all adds up, but this is at the tail. So, you know, more weight you add in the tail is obviously more of a concern than if you add weight somewhere else. But I am putting the Titan 340 on, so got a little extra weight up front. I'm hoping that any of these little mods I do aren't really going to be, they're going to be negligible. I believe they will. So I'll continue on getting these parts prepped. I'll get these strips done, and then I can start working on riveting those in place. And now that I know that that's what I want to do, I can go ahead and work on getting the left side skin put in here. Using my rivet hole spacer here, I think if I set it at this distance here, it's going to give me a good spacing. But then also, it's going to line up nicely with the existing longeron hole right here. It's off by half of a hole width, and it's still catching the longeron, or my diagonal support, just fine. So I'll go ahead and mark these out, and then I can get them drilled. This tool is great for setting up arbitrary rivet spacings, and because it's like a, what do you call it, a pentagram, it keeps everything equally spaced. So if I take this off now, yeah, that's perfect. So you can see, let me pull this off. You can see here, this one almost perfectly lined up. So I'm not even going to mess with it. I'm just going to use the existing hole there. Now this hole here ends up not catching anything. If you look back behind there, it just ends up being an empty hole. So I'll just pop a rivet in there just so there's not a hole. But then these will be the rivets that are going to rivet that one diagonal there. And I've already got this one here marked out for this one, which is that one back there. So I'll do the same thing on the other side. That worked out pretty good. Got all the holes in there. What I need to do now is get a strip of 062 that'll sit just behind the new strut here, between that and the skin. That'll act as a shim. And I'll go ahead and get a piece of that. I'll match drill through this strut. And at that point, then I could set the shim in there, and this would be ready for when the left skin is ready to rivet on in place. I'm approaching the stage where I'm going to want to attach the tail cone to the cage. You'll notice the tail feathers are on here. I had put those on. Really, I just wanted to put the vertical on because I wanted to make sure that my geometry for my machined pulley mounts here were not going to interfere with anything. I got the BAS tail pull handle. I really like this. I have one on my 150 tail dragger here, and it's brilliant. You just pull it out. You can maneuver the tail how you want, swing it around. When you're done, just pop it back in place. And I got the same setup now here for my Rans. Really glad that they ended up making this for the Rans. They do have this available. It's not, you have to call them or email them. They don't have it on their website specifically listed, but they do have it for the S-21. So it's a pretty easy install. It's just going to fit in between the side skins there. It just gets, flanges get riveted in place. And there you go. And what's nice on this one, and I could have done this on the 150. I've only got it on the left side here. This one has them on both sides, left and right. I could have done that on the 150 if I just pop a hole through this one here. But the left side is fine. That's what I've always done. But I'll do both sides on the S-21. So here we go. Cool. I'm going to wrap up this episode here and make this a two-part series on the Tailcone. There's just a lot going on, and we're already at 36 minutes in. So this will conclude part one of the Tailcone. In part two, I'll do the BAS tail pull install. I've got a special doublers that I made for that. I've got some other things that I want to do to the Tailcone. And then from there, I'm going to be moving on to the cage prep. Took some advice from a video I saw by Eddie Gill where he says rather than mate the cage to the Tailcone and do the boot cowl and all that stuff later, take advantage of having a lot of open access in the cage without it mated to the Tailcone, and do boot cowl, do the seat rails, do some bits of work to the cage like that. That just makes it easier to get to. So I took that advice. I've already started doing that. That'll be coming up in a cage prep episode. So we've got Tailcone episode 2 coming, cage prep coming. I've also got an episode where I built the seats. That'll be its own little separate episode. So lots coming. I'm just kind of chipping away at it, trying to focus my time between building, and then it takes a couple hours to edit the videos. So just a lot going on, but that'll be it for this episode. Thanks for watching. And if you like the content, please like and subscribe.